surround this gate. Just a few words of explanation as to why we're here, why I called this meeting. At the beginning of August, I received a letter from the Minister advising me that the Island Plan, which was approved only 2 years ago, was to be reviewed. And when I looked through the letter and the accompanying documents, I thought if this was going to proceed, it would have a significant impact on St Clement, because what it suggested in that review is something like 265 new homes in the green zone in the parish. What I was concerned about, the many things I was concerned about, this would increase our population of the parish by about 10% in one go. It would impact on our already failing infrastructure. We've seen the sewage problems near Green Island and in Rue de Montpetouille, and of course the impact on traffic, which we all know so much about. So because St Clement was being impacted so much by this potential change, potential rezoning after such a short period, I thought it was appropriate that I should invite the Minister to come and speak to parishioners to explain the rationale and the logic behind the proposed changes. Deputy Howell kindly accepted my invitation and is here this evening, and is going to make a short presentation to us and then take questions and receive comments. So without further ado, if I hand over to the Minister. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, to set the scene. When I became Minister 2 years ago, it was on the understanding that a remit had been set for me, or whoever was going to take over, and I drew the short straw, in terms of providing affordable housing. A number of our islanders, notably youngsters, have been disadvantaged of late in that trying to find properties that they can first afford has become completely impossible unless you've won the lottery, not just once but several times, or if you have wealthy parents for finding mortgages. So it was with that in mind that an element of work was actually set by the states in deciding the island plan before I was given the job. Part and parcel of what had been considered before was under a clause of the policies called 83, which was to provide affordable housing once it had been redefined, ostensibly and mainly from the private sector. So the suggestion was that perhaps the Minister could come up with a new formula to take off value from the land, because it's generally been agreed around the common table that one of the contributing factors to making property too expensive for our youngsters and first-time buyers is the cost of the plot. So I was tasked to actually speak with the construction industry and other owners of property to see to what extent we could come up with a formula other than the shared equity schemes that had been given a limited exposure by the previous administration. Thereafter, some 12 to 14 months of wrangling behind the scenes, we ended up with a number of presentations made by the Construction Forum to the Council of Ministers, to the Chief Minister, to complain basically that the Minister for Planning was trying to take away profit from the construction industry. And I thought that was a little bit below the belt, particularly because we were supposed to be working together. So after some further wrangling, it was decided that perhaps an alternative route was the better one, but mainly to bring forward opportunities for our youngsters to get their first homes at an affordable price, and for the homes to actually be kept in that category. Because a number of previous schemes have run with government subsidies only to find those persons who've purchased them putting those properties back onto the market at a higher price and then moving up the ladder, which isn't generally acceptable, because the affordable units come out of the pot or the pool, so to speak. So with the officers of my department, we came up with a different proposal, bearing in mind that the construction industry weren't going to play ball, and there was nothing in my box of tricks in order to twist arms to the level that was expected of me through my office. So we came forward with the easy part, I think, which was to redefine what was meant by affordability, because the previous definition, Category A and Category B, was somewhat confusing. The definition that I came up with, and has been agreed by the Council of Ministers, and hopefully will be agreed when the Iron Plan Amendment comes to the House for discussion and debate next year, was first and foremost that affordable really meant for persons who were on middle incomes. So the median salaries, and that's the middle, were the ones to be looked at. Now, why did I choose middle incomes? Because if you choose mean incomes, which is the average can be biased if indeed there are large figures taken into account, or indeed small figures. The fairer way of actually assessing what is an average income, so to speak, is to actually take whoever's in the middle, and that is the general accepted practice in many jurisdictions around the world. In doing that, our middle incomes turn out to be around about £28,000 per person. So the idea behind that was that times two for a couple, married or not, or whatever, a double income of £56,000 will be available to two persons on middle incomes. Having established that figure, I approached a number of banks and secured some preliminary discussions whereby it was agreed that at that level of income, which is equivalent at the moment to being able to pay the maximum rent in the States sector, some £275 a week or thereabouts, that mortgages, conventional mortgages of 25 years at 5% interest rates were available to those persons who were on middle incomes. So that kind of ticked that box, and that meant that monies could be found by couples going to conventional banking institutions and asking for a mortgage in the usual terms. That said, there's not much point in people going to get a mortgage if indeed the monies that they can borrow weren't sufficient to actually purchase a decent property. And this really was another the problem. And in speaking to a number of construction companies, they did agree that they were quite able to actually build decent houses for the £200,000 mortgages that a middle joint income would be able to afford. But that would mean a number of things. It would mean that we'd have to actually adopt a number of novel building techniques, and instead of building in conventional fashions, which add in an industry where there is sometimes a shortage of tradesmen to the overall cost, that meant that we had to consider the potential of moving towards modular build, which are techniques which allow whole walls and wide and with windows in to be built in factories and to be shipped over to Jersey to be erected. That in itself would mean that the build costs would come down, and the construction firms agreed that that was possible, although they wouldn't wish to see it kind of applied to all of the buildings that were going to be built in Jersey in the future. The third point, which was really crucial to the definition of affordability, was to see as well whether or not there were any legal mechanisms to actually ensure that any property that was built at an affordable level could actually remain affordable in perpetuity, so that we didn't actually lose out every time we built a house and sold it on, that we still would have an affordable stock, albeit at a small level to start off with. So all those three things were worded up in a form of words which, after a lot of wrangling, managed to gain support from the Council of Ministers. The second item, which was absolutely vital, having actually sorted out the long-term availability of sites, the income levels and the build techniques, was to actually establish where these buildings might be built. And it was my intention, having kind of not succeeded with the private industry, to encourage them to come forward with their sites to be sold to the states at lower prices than they were prepared to offer, that the only other route was either not to actually embark on the scheme at all, which was unreasonable, and I wouldn't have been doing what I'd been asked to do by the states. So the logical place to proceed was to actually look at our own sites. Now, a number of the sites that are in states' ownership I'm not particularly proud of, and I don't think some of the residents who live in them are either. They aren't at the top of the spectrum in terms of quality build, or indeed in the maintenance schemes that haven't been applied to keep them in tip-top order. That's something that the housing department are now going to address, and monies have been found to embark on maintenance schemes in order to bring the substandard units of accommodation up to a proper standard. But that being said, that's still left a whole load of sites which are built at very low densities compared to UK and beyond, or to a poorer standard. So with that in mind, I suggested as part of my policy that perhaps the best way forward to provide affordable unit accommodation opportunities for our youngsters was to build pretty well all of those units on the state's own sites to a better density, a better standard, and a better amenity standard. Not building rabbit hutches, not actually cramming people into smaller and smaller spaces, as has become the name of the game at the moment. The money that you spend at the moment on a first-time buyer house doesn't appear every year to actually gain you any more space by and large. It seems to go in the opposite direction. And that was something that if we used or were to use our own sites, we'd be able to counteract immediately. So with those two principles, four principles in mind, that the previous kind of instructions that the states had kind of outlined for delivering affordable units, which hadn't been supported by the construction industry, the only way forward was with this new plan. So I took it in February to the Council of Ministers and didn't receive the support that I thought I was going to receive. And a lot of discussion was along the lines of the extent to which other sites should nonetheless be coming forward to be rezoned for affordable housing. As I say, the Council of Ministers agreed the affordability criterion, but they didn't necessarily agree that the way forward that I was suggesting about only building affordable units on state-owned sites was the way forward. And many members around the table felt that because of the way the previous island plan debate had been held, that some of the sites that had been promised were earmarked for building at a late stage were put on hold by the previous Minister for Planning, and a number of members, as I say, felt that they'd been shortchanged in not actually having the debate. The debate was put off basically because we didn't find ourselves in a position when we were discussing the island plan to agree on the definitions of affordability or the H3 policy or shared equity or anything else. So it was felt that rather than compromise the island plan debate and not actually agree anything, and thereby waste what had been a very good process of consultation, and for the first time allowing states members to come forward with amendments which have been properly consulted upon, a shorter term plan to get the thing through in a shape that represented the bulk of the work was embarked upon by the previous minister. So the Council of Ministers decided that they would prefer, rather than to put all their eggs into the states of Jersey owned sites basket, to ask the Minister and myself to come forward with a proposal for sites to be redebated to see whether or not there was any appetite, either amongst states members or amongst the population, to build on those sites in addition, exclusively, or not at all. And that's pretty much where we are at the moment. I argued the case that I thought that if we were going to do that, it was abundantly clear, in my mind at least, that the only way that any planning minister with green credentials would be able to come forward with those suggestions was if the new zoning would be not for open market first-time buyer properties, which couldn't be ring-fenced in terms of keeping them in a state of affordability in perpetuity. But perhaps there might be an argument to say that if the zoning only applied to building affordable units in the terms that I've described, then perhaps consideration of those sites could go ahead. And that's pretty much where we are at the moment. The process is open. No decision has been taken as to whether these sites, even if they do receive the support of the States Chamber and other States members, no decision has been further taken and can't be taken until we've had the debate. I'm adamant that the public must be consulted, the parishes, that's why I'm here, must be consulted, and all of the considerations that come forward have to be weighed up before we decide to move the island in this direction or not. Now, there have been a number of comments that have been made by other parishes at the moment as to whether or not the suggestion that had been made by my predecessor, Senator Cohen, that the constables and the parishes should play a larger part in determining their own housing within the parish envelope, as to whether or not that is a viable thing for the current planning minister to consider. At the moment, with the St Juan's application, we do have some chinks, if you like, in the argument coming forward, whereby the parish is, on the one hand, saying that they would consider releasing their field that's been left to them by some benefactor, if they could choose to populate it with people for sheltered housing exclusively who live in St Juan. Now, the planning minister in charge of the planning department, I have to take into account the islanders' needs as a whole. So although Freddie decided to allow the constables up to a point to be in a position to encourage the determination of what units are going to go where, I'm not of the mind that that's necessarily a sensible move, because it will inevitably lead, in some cases, and perhaps all, to individual parishes determining that they would only wish to allow land to come forward for their own, so to speak, and that would actually leave the present minister in a bit of a fix if indeed there was a greater need being expressed by other parishes who didn't have any land coming forward. So at the end of the day, to be fair, all sites that are being considered for specific zoning, for affordable units, for social rented or for social purchase. Both of those will be properly affordable, and the list as to who has the opportunity to live in them will be handled by the strategic housing unit that's just been set up within the Chief Minister's Department and the Population Department, and it will be able to obviously consider requests from the individual parish constables and parishioners as to the proportion of units that could be passed over to those parishioners who live in the parish, but generally the sites are intended to actually meet an island need. Now, if this isn't acceptable to individual parishes, then so be it, and it's up to the parishioners and the public to actually make those objections known to myself through the planning process, and all these things will be weighed up when we get to the state's debate. So it's definitely not cut and dried. I, as planning minister, do share your reservations in some instances, but with the island-wide hat on, I'm being asked to do a job on behalf of the island by all islanders, and if indeed that isn't the job that people would wish me to do in future, then I need to be told that loud and clear and do something else. So that's pretty much where we are, so I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Minister. The Minister's kindly agreed to take comments and to listen to